The speculation is finally over, guys. We have actual Tier 1 quarterbacks to talk about. Finally. The XFL released Tier 1 quarterbacks before the draft, and we'll get to the draft in a separate segment. Look out for that on our YouTube and Facebook pages. But right now we're talking about the Tier 1 quarterback list. Now, it's important to keep in mind that this list is going to be changing. Oliver Luck has said, especially recently, this list is just like a starter list. It's an initial list. It's a fluid list. They are going to continue to pursue quarterbacks that are currently on NFL rosters, practice squads, and see kind of how the dominoes fall as they approach February 2020. Mm-hmm. But this is the list we're starting out with. And right now, I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I agree, Riley. I was actually taken by surprise of the guys that were on there initially. We'll get to a couple of the names that I'm referring to a little bit later, but one of the names that I was really excited to see on there was Cardale Jones get assigned to the DC Defenders. Big physical guy, obviously won the national championship at Ohio State, but really learned under Phillip Rivers for the last 2-3 years. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in the XFL for the DC Defenders.
He's definitely the biggest name, isn't he, from the list? I mean, we knew about Landry Jones, obviously. So out of the remaining 7, he's the biggest get, right? In terms of name recognition.
Yeah, I would think so. Unless we have a lot of AAF fans that watch, but I would say to the casual football fan, he has definitely got to be the biggest name, at least the one that's most recognizable. Maybe Erin Murray you may be able to make a case for, but I think Cardale Jones is the biggest one. So huge get for the XFL.
Well, I also think he's the biggest name and the biggest unknown. I mean, he showed us a glimpse of potential stardom when he was at Ohio State, and he went on to lead them to a national championship. So you saw that for 2 or 3 games and a few games the next year, and then it's kind of just he went to the wayside. He was on the practice squad for the Los Angeles Chargers this past summer and didn't make the cut, but you saw potential there too. So he's a bunch of potential. You just want to see him get in the game and see what he can do at this point.
All right, Kenny. I see you shaking your head. Go ahead. Why do you not like Cardale Jones?
I want to know who Cardale Jones has blackmailed in his career.
Oh, my God.
Fail forward as much as he has. And not only that, as a fellow DC guy, obviously, I want to know, did the Defenders bring in Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder to make this pick? I just don't.
Oh, my goodness.
I just don't.
Here we go.
Hot takes coming in hot with the hot takes. Oh my God, you're getting more ridiculous every time we talk about Cardale Jones.
The guys had
the hate's getting out of hand.
Games and since 2013 when he committed to Ohio State.
He's also the only quarterback in this list with a national championship.
I'd still take all 7 over him. It's not even close. The guys had – look, I get it. The guy got hot for 3 games. He's played in 3 meaningful games since 2013. And that's it. That's all he's done.
You're really brushing over that meaningful.
Yeah.
That's it.
Those are 3 pretty big games.
By the way, on a team that had 3 quarterbacks that absolutely exploded too. It's not like Braxton Miller and JT Barrett played awful before they got hurt. I mean, they were throwing to guys like Michael Thomas. They had Zeke there. I mean, you could have put anybody behind with this. Yeah. You could have.
JT Barrett threw to the same guys. JT Barrett's a free agent right now. Why isn't he in the XFL?
Because Cardale Jones because he's not 6'5" like Cardale Jones.
Cardale Jones' problem was that he left too early. He should have stayed.
Because he got benched. He got benched. He lost to Virginia Tech and lost his job to JT Barrett the next year.
Well, I mean. JT Barrett's a good.
He was done. His career at Ohio State was over. He was going to be a backup to JT Barrett.
He was the 3rd string quarterback going into the national championship run. So he was already behind in terms of JT Barrett was ahead of him in the roster. He was older than him. He was a leader in the locker room. So Cardale Jones, he may have had to transfer, but he definitely wasn't ready for the NFL.
Well, for one,
so I think leaving was a detriment to his progress as a quarterback.
For one, I'm not saying he should be in the XFL. I'm saying he shouldn't be a Tier 1 quarterback. This is not a franchise. I don't get how you make this your franchise guy, how you put all your eggs in that basket, unless they're going to pick somebody else, because we talked about it being fluid, which I'm fine with. But if this is your guy, if this is the face of your startup football team, that's a lot of faith to put into a guy who's shown up for 3 games in 6 years. That's just my opinion.
Well, it's a wait-and-see type of thing. Cardale Jones, a very polarizing name. I think, Kenny, I could be wrong. Leave your thoughts in the comments section if you're viewing this. I think you're in the minority. I really do.
By the way, for the record, before I get all this, he's probably a Michigan fan talk. I'm actually the Ohio State fan. I like Ohio State.
He is. I will give him that.
I just don't like Cardale Jones as a pro quarterback.
In my opinion, he wouldn't have stuck around in the NFL as a backup or even been on practice squads if he wasn't showing some sort of talent. There's enough quarterback talent coming in and year out in the NFL to easily be bounced if you're not good enough. To say he stayed just based on his size, I just don't think NFL GMs act that way.
I think what we're looking at here
you can play.
Is a guy that had 3 massive games, has a national championship, has all of the tools to be a good quarterback, and he just took bad advice. He just left early. He should have stayed, even if it wasn't a backup role, just to get reps, just to get that experience under him, because he was thrown into the fire or he wasn't thrown into the fire, but he threw himself into the fire of the NFL world, and he just wasn't ready for it as a quarterback. So I think the XFL is a perfect place for him. Pep Hamilton is a very well-known, well-respected offensive guru. So I think it's a great fit in terms of the system that Pep is running. It's yet to be seen, but let's move on. There's other quarterbacks here other than Cardale Jones. Pastel, is there a guy that really stood out to you when you look at this list of quarterbacks?
Yeah, there actually was, and it's kind of funny because it's the same team that drafted a quarterback 2nd overall, and that's the Houston Roughnecks, and it's Phillip Walker. This is a college quarterback that played at the University of Temple. Had a very productive career at Temple, and I thought he actually did well when he played for the Indianapolis Colts. I thought he was the guy that was going to be the backup as soon as Andrew Luck left. It didn't work out that way. Chad Kelly ended up winning that backup spot, and I think it surprised me and many Indianapolis Colts fans that Phillip Walker didn't win that spot. So I was kind of curious where he was going to end up. If it was going to be a practice squad, and I guess it's now the XFL. But I think the guy has potential. I think he has a lot of characteristics to be successful in a league like this and even in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brandon. I like him. I was surprised to see Houston take Connor Cook as high as they did. But I remember Phillip Walker at Temple, and honestly, he was the leader and the captain of some of the best Temple teams that have ever been assembled. And if, for those who might not recognize the name, he went by P.J. Walker in college. He didn't put up mind-blowing numbers, but he was a leader. He was a winner. And clearly June Jones feels comfortable enough for him to run the run and gun to allocate him as a Tier 1 quarterback to their team.
Yep. They're comfortable enough to have him allocated, but not comfortable enough to not take a quarterback in the first round of the draft. Kind of odd.
That's what I was gonna.
That's
what stuck out to me too. That strategy really stuck out. So I wonder if behind the scenes, maybe that Phillip Walker was really low on their list and ended up being allocated. And June Jones was like, you know what? I'm going with Connor Cook. I got to go with a guy that I think I can win with. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It could almost be the opposite. I mean, we don't know the background yet, but he could be really high on their list, and they might think, hey, this guy might get picked up by an NFL team at some point. We need to have a backup.
That's
a great point.
That's a very good point. Or what if, and another kind of devil's advocate, what if Connor Cook was like 3rd or 4th on June Jones's list, and Phillip Walker was like 2nd or 3rd? It's like he sees an opportunity to have 2 guys that he would have been fine with being allocated. Now he's got them both.
I think it's worth mentioning, though, since now we have Houston with their allocated quarterback and they pick up Connor Cook in the first round of the actual draft, does that kind of close the door for Johnny Manziel talk, at least until we get to the season? Because all of the buzz around Johnny Manziel was Houston was his landing spot. He played under June Jones, even if it was for a short time. But he did play under him, and June Jones apparently likes Johnny Manziel. He mentioned him in interviews that he's been doing over the past few weeks, that he's in that list that he provided to the XFL. So does this kind of seal the door for now for Johnny Manziel?
I think so. I had a feeling if he was going to be in the league, he would have been 1 allocated, or 2 he would have been in the draft pool. I mean, there's no reason for to keep that such a secret to add him in November. I mean, maybe he goes in the supplemental draft, maybe he declares his intention to try out for an XFL team, but I feel like the PR would have been out there by now. This isn't something you keep secret for a startup league. I don't see it.
Yeah. I want to focus on the quarterbacks that the XFL did sign, but I do think it's worth mentioning, considering Johnny Manziel's Johnny Manziel. Kenny, who is someone else that has stood out to you?
I'm very excited to see Erin Murray on the list. One of the SEC's most prolific passers. Led Georgia to a lot of wins, and I've heard from some Georgia fans that maybe he's not as hyped as a lot of Georgia players, a lot of Georgia quarterbacks. He's not as beloved because they didn't win a national championship. But the guy was stellar. I mean, we're talking about one of the top 5 best SEC quarterbacks of all time. And we're talking about, and you got guys like Peyton Manning, you got guys like Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, who have all played in the SEC. Then this guy pretty much has better stats than all of them. So I think it's a big get, and I'm excited to see what he can do.
Pastel, you're a Georgia man. What do you think of Erin Murray?
I think he is what he is. He is who we thought he is, kind of guy, right? He's going to be a good quarterback. I have zero doubt that he's going to be a good quarterback in this league. I don't think he's going to be explosive by any means. I think he's going to get the job done. I think he's about as average as somebody like Alex Smith is to the NFL. I would compare him to probably what he's going to be in the XFL.
If I'm a Tampa fan, if I'm a Tampa fan, I'm hoping that the XFL is still pursuing somebody for the Tampa Bay tier 1 spot.
100%.
I don't want to knock him too hard because he was on the worst team in the AAF, in the Atlanta Legends. He was benched to start the year behind Matt Sims, who was terrible. And it took him a few weeks to get in. Finally got his opportunity, had his ups and downs, but finished with 3 touchdowns, 7 picks. Extremely inconsistent player. I'm sure a lot of that had to do with the lack of talent that was around him. But he's a smaller guy. He doesn't have the arm strength. So I worry that his skill set, while it fit in college, doesn't translate to the professional level, even if it is an AAF or an XFL.
See, I think he fits because Mark Trestman, and this is well documented on our show, and his resume is a quarterback whisperer. I thought whatever quarterback ended up on Tampa Bay is going to be a heck of a quarterback because there's no way Mark Trestman doesn't allocate himself, doesn't put in for a quarterback that he really likes. I think Erin Murray is going to flourish under Mark Trestman's tutelage.
Yeah, that's a great point, Kenny. If it's going to work, it's with Mark Trestman.
Yep.
Head coaching wise, he obviously has had his ups and downs. Very successful in the CFL, but as an offensive coordinator, a quarterback whisperer, I think is what you said. You can't deny that. So he's in a good situation coaching wise. We'll see how things play out around him. I think he's a guy that he needs pieces around him in order to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like quarterbacks in the AAF, they weren't set up for success. I mean, the offensive line play there was just garbage. No one had any time to actually throw the football. And maybe it's just lack of knowledge. Riley, Kenny, Gless, please tell me, was there any quarterbacks in the AAF that actually put up those amazing stats? I feel like a Luis Perez.
Garrett Gilbert's the backup in Cleveland. He was probably the best. John Wolford had his moments.
Yep.
Out in Arizona. I mean, there were guys that had moments, but Garrett Gilbert was the really only consistent quarterback in the AAF. But like I said, Erin Murray, I'll give him a little bit of a pass because the Atlanta Legends were so god-awful. And his head coach and Brad Childress quit before the season even started. Michael Vick, I don't think Michael Vick made it to the first game as offensive coordinator.
No,
so the whole Atlanta Legends season was a disaster before it even started. Yep. So, but you did mention Luis Perez. I'm interested to get what you guys think about Luis Perez. He was a darling of the AAF. He was very hyped up entering with his, he has a feel-good story. He didn't play football at all until high school, and he comes in. He was Division II Player of the Year, and honestly, I don't see what all the hype's about. I mean, if he has time in the pocket, he is dangerous. I will give him that. Insanely accurate. Throws a beautiful ball. But he is the slowest MFer I've ever seen in my life. Like, the guy literally does not move. So, if there's any type of pressure in the pocket, he has decent pocket awareness, but he's just too slow. He can't get out of pressure at all. So, he's a guy that in LA, kind of like Tampa Bay, I'm kind of still searching for that tier 1 quarterback. If you go into the season with a Luis Perez, it's not the end of the world, because you can see by these highlights, the dude has talent. He has some serious arm talent. That's why he's been looked at. He's been in camps, and you see right there, he is fearless. He does not mind taking a hit. The problem is that that's all he does when he gets pressure is take hits.
Yeah, it's definitely a calculated risk for LA. They're definitely going off of that potential that we see in those highlights. So the track record's not necessarily there. He played D2 at a lower level, but I mean, if you're going to play at a low level, you need to put up big numbers. I mean, the guy threw for 5,000 yards and 46 touchdowns his senior year. Harlan Hill Trophy that year, national champion. So the guy has the accolades at a lower level, and he dominated at a lower level. So if you're going to take a risk on a guy who's got a lot of physical upsides like that, you got to put a lot of talent around him, which little teaser, I think Riley and I are kind of in the same opinion on who won the skill position draft today. Yeah. Tune in for that later. But if you're going to draft somebody like that, you've got to put the talent around him, and it's got to be someone with a track record of dominating at a lower level, which he's done.
If anything, you got to get the protection around him. And looking at the AAF stats, he didn't throw a touchdown before he was benched for Keith Price. That tells you something. He picked his game up as the season went on. He got back in, threw 3 touchdowns when he came back in, but he also threw 2 interceptions. I think he ended with 5 touchdowns overall, but it took him like 6 weeks to get a touchdown pass on one of the better teams in the league. So there's a skill set there, and I see why coaches are mesmerized by him and want to work with him. And he's got an amazing attitude. He's a really good guy. So I hope it works out for him. I worry about the lack of quickness in the pocket and to be able to avoid pressure and get the throw out accurately.
Yeah. So with the remaining 3 quarterbacks, you got Landry Jones, Brandon Silvers, and Jordan Tiamo. And Matt McGloy, the last 4 quarterbacks. Is there any one of those 4 that you guys love? Any 4 that you guys just don't like at all?
Well, I think we can all be in agreement that Landry Jones is probably the best quarterback in this.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I agree with that.
List. Yep. So him aside, the other one that I am excited about is Jordan Tiamo. I think he's going to be. I think he has a lot of potential, and we say that about a lot of these players. But there's a reason why they're in the XFL, right? Not the NFL, because the potential is there. Some people just need a little bit more time to develop, and I think that's him. He's a guy out of Ole Miss, coming from Hawaii, and the guy shows freakish athletic ability as well as arm talent, and I can see him doing very well. I mean, he just needed a few more years of development, and I can see this working out very well for him.
He's one of the younger guys, so that's something to be optimistic about as well. It's nice that they have a mixture of some guys that, like a Landry Jones, a Cardale Jones, who have been in the league, and a younger guy just coming out of school.
Yeah, I really like that. That's really what stood out to me. Obviously, he played really well at Ole Miss his senior year. I mean, he was 2nd team All-SEC. And that's saying something. I mean, when you're second in the league and passing in that league, I mean, you can play, man. You can really.
The guy he finished behind's not too bad either, you know.
Oh, Tua.
Yeah, Tua's all right. So I really like that. But I think the point you made about mixing in a young guy here, right? A guy that has talent, that performed at a very high level in a really tough league, is now an XFL Tier 1 guy. I think says a lot of really good precedent, right? This league really takes off. I think you're going to see more of these guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. He backed up Chad Kelly and Shea Patterson when he first got into college, right?
He backed up Shea Patterson, and then Patterson got hurt, and then obviously he left, went to Michigan, and then he took over his senior year. So he got about a year and a half playing experience in the SEC.
Got it.
A guy that he's not going to excite you off, reading his name off the page, but he's a guy. It's weird. Like through all of our conversations leading up to this list being put out, he was never mentioned once, I don't think, and that's Matt McGloin from Penn State. Spent some time in the league. And Kenny, I know you're pretty high on him. And I think in terms of a fit with Kevin Gilbride, while it's not going to blow you away, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's obviously had an extensive pro background in the NFL. He played 4 years. He started 7 games. His touchdown to interception ratio wasn't bad. He's proven that he's able to lead teams down the field and be a field general when called upon. He's just your typical, career backup. He was going to come in. He's going to do a solid job. He was never going to light the world on fire, but he wasn't going to cost you games either. Now take that down a level, and he's playing in the XFL.
Right.
He's playing for a coach who runs a similar style offense that he ran in the NFL. Kevin Gilbride's going to run a pro style offense. He's from the Northeast. He played at Penn State, so he knows how to handle that cold, frigid weather up there that he's going to be dealing with in New York come February. I think it's a home run hire. I thought it was a very underrated allocation, and it was so off the radar that when it was announced, I was surprised but excited at the same time.
He's like an Eli Manning light, isn't he? He's not going to blow you away with his athleticism, but he's going to understand the concept, the complex scheme that Kevin Gilbride runs, and he's going to make the throws that he has to. So It kind of like, if you're going to get the Eli Manning of the XFL, it's kind of McGloin, isn't it?
Yeah, and if I know Bill O'Brien had a huge impact on his college career because he kind of was floundering at Penn State, and they were kind of trying to figure out, was he the guy, to lead the team? And when Bill O'Brien came in and installed that pro system that he ran at New England, now that he runs in Houston for the Texans, he took off. He flourished. I mean, he threw 60% completion percentage, 3,200 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions his senior year when Bill O'Brien finally came in. So it's very clear that the pro-style system that he's going to be running in New York is going to suit him very well. And I'm really excited to see what he can do there in New York.
So let's transition to Brandon Silvers, another AAF quarterback that's making the jump to the XFL. It's exciting to see him. He has a Twitter army, I think, Glessner, doesn't he? He gets a lot of love anytime we're posting something on Twitter about him, but for good reason. He got very limited playing time in the AAF, mostly because they folded right when he got the opportunity. The Memphis quarterback situation was a mess. They started with Hackenberg. We won't go into that, but didn't work out, obviously. Mettenberger came in. Mettenberger actually wasn't bad. He got hurt for the year, and then Silvers came in, and then they signed Johnny Manziel. They kind of went back and forth, and Silvers outplayed Johnny Manziel, and even though the fans wanted to see Johnny Manziel, football-wise, they had to go with Silvers, and he performed with the limited opportunities that he was given.
Yeah, but Brandon Silvers was a really good player in college at Troy. I really loved his game in college. So I'm really excited to see what he can do in Seattle. This also may be one of those kind of iffy, if there's another quarterback available in December and January, might be a good spot in Seattle. But initially the reviews were good. Again, big physical kid, can really sling the ball around. I loved his game at Troy. So I'm really excited to see what he can do if he's going to be the guy in Seattle. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Seattle, another club, to bring on a practice squad guy or anybody that becomes available kind of falls off that NFL tree.
I think out of all of the AAF quarterbacks, he's probably the one I'd be most comfortable with going into the season. I think he's the most polished passer. He has the best pocket presence. He makes all of the tight throws. I just think if he had a little more time in the AAF, he would have stood out as one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Because if you take like him and Erin Murray, they were on the two worst teams in the league. One of them brought his team up, and one of them wasn't able to elevate anyone around him. So Brandon Silvers, for that reason alone, he excites me in the XFL.
Well, look, you don't play quarterback at Troy and lead your team into Death Valley and beat LSU at home if you're not a solid as a rock quarterback. So his college, like Les said, his college resume speaks for itself. The guy won a ton of games at Troy. He won big games at Troy, including a big upset of LSU at LSU. And look, and his coach in college was Neil Brown. You're not a Neil Brown quarterback unless you can play quarterback really, really well. That guy has an outstanding pedigree of developing quarterbacks at the offensive level. He's now currently the head coach at West Virginia first year. But if you look at where he's coached before in his background, Neil Brown's not a joke. He's one of the most highly regarded up-and-coming coaches in college football, and Brandon Silvers ran his offense impeccably.
So Brandon Silvers will be a Seattle Dragon. Let's move on to our last and final, certainly last but not least quarterback, a guy that we've known was going to be in in this initial list, and a guy that we would have been shocked if he didn't go to Dallas and Bob Stoops, and that's Landry Jones. Out of all of the quarterbacks, I think in terms of a quality of player, what he's done in the NFL and in college, combination of that, he's the guy that you're most excited about.
Yeah, for me, I think he's the number one seed of all the allocated quarterbacks. I mean, he did well in his tenure at Pittsburgh. He's one of the all-time most prolific quarterbacks in not only Big 12 history, but NCAA history. Like, his numbers are what you would see in a video game, like our NCAA video game. 16,500 passing yards, 123 touchdowns for a career, 63% completion percentage, plus the resume with Bob Stoops. I think that's just a recipe for starting your franchise off on the right foot. He now gets to play for his college coach and an offense he knows inside and out, and ran to be one of the most prolific, unstoppable passers in NCAA history.
Yeah, we shouldn't be surprised. We shouldn't be surprised at all. I mean, he's the biggest name on this list. Again, his record speaks for itself. And, when he got playing time in the NFL, for the most part, he performed well. So I don't think any of us are surprised at this guy and what he can do and why he's the number one seed. But he's a solid reason why we should all be really excited, because he can play. I mean, he really can. So I'm excited.
And to Kenny's point, his familiarity with Bob Stoops, I really don't think you can underestimate that. He's going to come in there. He's going to know exactly what he wants to run. I mean, they drafted a receiver from Oklahoma with their first overall pick in today's draft, and
it wasn't the guy that we thought it was going to be, was it?
No, it
was not. No, it wasn't.
That Bob Stoops did recruit, wasn't able to coach, but he did recruit, and I do think there's going to be a familiarity with the Renegades that's going to bring success to that organization.
Yep.
So XFL fans, what do you think? Who are you excited about? Who are you not so excited about? Let us know on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at XFL Chalk Talk, and we'll see if this list, how much it moves when we come to February 2020. What's up, football fans? This is Riley from XFL Chalk Talk. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things XFL, and interact with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at XFL Chalk Talk.